I sat in that Phoenix courtroom watching my own parents testify against me, demanding I pay child support for a baby that wasn't mine. My wife Sarah held hands with my brother Derek while their lawyer shuffled through documents that would legally bind me to another man's child. The judge leaned forward, seemingly sympathetic to their case. My mother dabbed her eyes with tissue, playing the grieving grandmother perfectly. Derek smirked at me from across the aisle, whispering something that made Sarah nod nervously. My own attorney looked defeated before we'd even begun. The air felt thick with betrayal as I realized everyone in that room expected me to crumble under the weight of their united front against me. 6 months earlier, life seemed normal. I was Andy Patterson, 32 years old, working as an automotive technician at Autotech Industries in Phoenix. Sarah and I had been married for 4 years, living in our small ranch house on Maple Street. We'd been trying to start a family, so when she announced her pregnancy last spring, I felt like the luckiest man alive. Derek had just returned from what he claimed was a military deployment in Afghanistan. Our parents insisted he stay with us while he readjusted to civilian life. I'd always looked out for my younger brother, so naturally I agreed. Derek was 28, charming in that reckless way that had gotten him into trouble since childhood, but he was family. The first few weeks seemed fine. Derek helped around the house, fixed the leaky faucet I'd been putting off, even offered to paint the nursery. Sarah glowed with pregnancy, her auburn hair catching sunlight as she planned our future. I worked extra shifts to save money for the baby, coming home exhausted but happy. Then I started noticing small things. Sarah would stop talking when I entered rooms. She avoided her prenatal appointments, claiming scheduling conflicts. Derek had money to spend despite being unemployed. When I asked where it came from, he'd laugh and say he'd saved his deployment pay. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon in July. I'd left work early to surprise Sarah for her doctor's appointment, but she wasn't home. I found the mail scattered on the kitchen counter, including an envelope from her obstetrician. Inside were lab results showing the baby's blood type as O negative. My hands shook as I stared at that paper. I'm A positive. Sarah is B positive. Basic biology made it impossible for us to have an O negative child. The room seemed to spin as months of suspicion crystallized into devastating certainty. When Sarah returned home that evening, I was waiting in the living room with the lab results spread across the coffee table. Her face went white when she saw them. "Andy, I can explain," she whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. 4 years of marriage. I said, my voice surprisingly steady. 4 years of planning our family together. How long has this been going on? She collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her cheeks. It started 3 months after Derek moved in. I never meant for it to happen. He was so attentive, so different from when you're always working. Different how? The question came out harsher than I intended. He listened to me. Really listened. You come home tired, we eat dinner, watch television, go to bed. With Derek, I felt alive again. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So you decided to destroy our marriage and lie about paternity. I thought maybe if we could just get through this, raise the baby together, you'd never have to know. Before I could respond, Derek's truck pulled into the driveway. He walked through the front door like he owned the place, saw the papers on the table, and actually smiled. "Well," he said, grabbing a beer from our refrigerator, "guess the cat's out of the bag." "That's all you have to say." I stood up. My fists clenched. "You betrayed your own brother." Derek shrugged, popping open the beer. "Sarah chose the better brother. Can't say I blame her." The casual cruelty in his voice hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't guilt or remorse. This was satisfaction. "Get out," I said. "Both of you, get out of my house." "Actually," Derek said, settling into my favorite chair, "I think you're the one who needs to leave. Sarah's pregnant. She needs stability." Stability. I laughed bitterly. From someone who's been unemployed for 3 months, things change, Derek said cryptically. That night I called my parents. Surely they'd understand the magnitude of this betrayal. My mother answered on the second ring. Andy, sweetheart, Derek already told us everything. We think you should come over so we can talk this through as a family. When I arrived at their house on Thunderbird Road, I found Derek and Sarah already there. My parents, Robert and Linda Patterson, sat across from me in their living room like they were conducting an intervention. Son, my father began, we know this is difficult, but family means forgiveness. Forgiveness. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, Derek slept with my wife. She's carrying his child while married to me. Mistakes happen, my mother said gently. What matters now is that baby. That child will be our grandchild, regardless of biology. The baby isn't my responsibility. Legally, it is, Derek interjected. In Arizona, the husband is presumed to be the father. You'll be on the hook for child support whether you like it or not. Derek, my mother warned that's not helpful. But Derek wasn't finished. I'm just being realistic. Andy makes good money at the shop. Sarah and I will need support while we figure things out. While you figure things out, the words felt surreal. You're planning to stay together? Sarah spoke for the first time since we'd arrived. Andy, I'm so sorry this happened, but Derek and I, we love each other. My parents nodded like this made perfect sense. My father leaned forward. We think the best solution is for you to file for divorce quietly. No need to air dirty laundry. Derek and Sarah can live here while they get on their feet. You can maintain a relationship with the baby. Maintain a relationship with Derek's child. Your legal child, my mother corrected, and our grandchild. I looked around at these people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. My wife, my brother, my parents. All of them had apparently decided my feelings were irrelevant. 2 weeks later, I moved into a studio apartment across town. Derek and Sarah moved into my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. Within a month, Derek was driving my old truck, the one I'd given my parents when I bought my newer one. But the real shock came 6 weeks after I'd left. Sarah called me at work, her voice shaking. Andy, I need to tell you something. Unless it's an apology, I don't want to hear it. I'm pregnant again. The words hit me like ice water. Again, 2 months along, Derek and I were having another baby. This time there would be no question about paternity. Derek was ensuring his hold on my former life with a second child. As I hung up the phone, I realized this wasn't just about an affair. This was about replacement. Derek hadn't just stolen my wife. He was systematically taking over my entire existence. 4 months before the court hearing, a process server appeared at my apartment door with a manila envelope that would change everything. Inside were divorce papers and a petition for child support that took my breath away. Sarah was demanding $800 a month for baby Emma plus medical expenses and childcare costs. I immediately called Janet Walsh, a divorce attorney recommended by my coworker. Her office occupied the 3rd floor of a glass building downtown, and Janet herself was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in complex family law cases. Arizona has strong presumed father laws, she explained during our first meeting. Since you were married, when Emma was conceived and born, the state considers you the legal father regardless of biological evidence. But blood tests prove she's not mine. Blood tests can support your case, but they don't automatically absolve you of legal responsibility. Sarah's attorney is arguing that you accepted the pregnancy, prepared for fatherhood, and established a parental relationship. I established a relationship because I thought she was mine. Janet nodded sympathetically. I understand, but the court's primary concern is the child's welfare. They won't want to leave a baby without financial support. The retainer alone cost me $3,000 money I didn't have. I'd been working overtime at Autotech, pulling double shifts to afford my apartment and mounting legal bills. Meanwhile, Sarah's legal representation came courtesy of Morrison Blake and Associates, one of Phoenix's most expensive firms. That seemed odd. Sarah worked part-time at a veterinary clinic. Derek had no job. My parents lived on modest retirement income. How were they affording legal fees that probably ran $500 an hour? I decided to investigate. My first stop was my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon when I knew they'd be home. I needed to understand how deep this conspiracy ran. My mother answered the door with forced cheerfulness. "Andy, what a surprise! Come in, come in." The house felt different. New furniture in the living room, a big screen television I'd never seen before, and Derek's expensive workout equipment cluttering the garage. For people supporting an unemployed couple and 2 babies, my parents seemed to be spending freely. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "How are Derek and Sarah affording Morrison Blake and Associates?" My mother's smile faltered slightly. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Their lawyer charges $500 an hour. That's not exactly legal aid pricing." "Well," she said carefully, "sometimes families have to make sacrifices for each other." "What kind of sacrifices?" Before she could answer, Derek emerged from the kitchen holding baby Emma. Seeing him with the child that everyone expected me to support financially sent rage coursing through my veins. "Andy," Derek said with mock surprise, "what brings you to the family homestead?" "I was asking Mom about your legal expenses." Derek's grin widened. "Oh, that. Yeah, we had to get creative with financing. But it's worth it to make sure Emma gets what she deserves." "Which is what exactly?" "Security, stability, the kind of support only a successful brother can provide." My father appeared from the backyard, grass stains on his khakis from mowing the lawn. "Andy, good to see you, son." "Dad, I need to know how you're paying for Derek's lawyer." My parents exchanged a look that confirmed my suspicions. Finally, my father sighed. "We took out a home equity loan." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "You mortgaged your house?" "We liquidated our retirement account too," my mother added quietly. "Derek needs the best representation possible." "Derek needs to get a job." "He's looking," my father said defensively. "But with the baby coming and Sarah needing help with Emma, it's complicated." "Complicated?" I stared at them in disbelief. "You're destroying your financial future for a son who got another man's wife pregnant?" "That's enough," Derek said sharply. "You don't get to judge family decisions when you abandoned your responsibilities." "My responsibilities?" "To Emma, to Sarah, to this family." I looked around at these people who shared my DNA but felt like strangers. "You're all insane." As I turned to leave, Derek called after me. "By the way, Andy, you might want to talk to your supervisor on Monday. I heard there were some questions about your performance lately." I stopped cold. "What did you say?" "Just that maybe working all those double shifts is affecting your judgment, making careless mistakes. You wouldn't want to lose your job right before child support hearings start." The threat was clear. Derek wasn't just taking my family and my parents' money. He was coming after my livelihood too. That evening, I sat in my sparse apartment trying to process what I'd learned. My parents had borrowed against their home and depleted their retirement to fund Derek's legal war against me. They weren't just enabling his behavior, they were financing it. The next Monday at work, my supervisor, Rick Martinez, called me into his office. Rick was a fair man who'd given me opportunities to advance, so I was surprised by his serious expression. "Andy, I got a call over the weekend. Someone claiming to be your brother, saying he was concerned about your mental state." "My mental state?" "He suggested you've been unstable lately, drinking on the job, making threats against co-workers. Said he thought I should know before something serious happened." Heat flooded my face. "Rick, that's completely false." "I figured as much. You've never missed a day, never caused problems. But the caller seemed to know details about your personal situation. Divorce, custody issues, financial stress. Derek's trying to sabotage my job." Rick nodded slowly. "I can't prove anything, but I wanted to warn you. If he calls again, I'll handle it." but you might want to document this pattern of harassment. Walking home that night, I realized Derek's campaign against me was broader than I'd imagined. He wasn't content with stealing my wife and bankrupting my parents. He wanted to destroy my ability to fight back by eliminating my income. But Derek had made one crucial mistake. In his arrogance, he'd revealed his strategy too early. Now I knew this wasn't just about child support. This was about complete domination. As I reached my apartment building, I noticed a familiar truck parked across the street. Derek sat behind the wheel watching me, with that same satisfied smirk. When our eyes met, he started the engine and drove away slowly, making sure I understood the message. I was being hunted by my own brother, and my parents were paying for the bullets. 3 months before the court hearing, I hired Marcus Thompson, a private investigator recommended by Janet Walsh. Marcus was a former Phoenix police detective who specialized in background checks and financial investigations. His fee was $200 a day, money I couldn't afford but desperately needed to invest. "I need everything you can find on my brother Derek Patterson," I told him, in his cramped office near downtown. "Military service, employment history, criminal record, financial activities." "What am I looking for specifically?" "Inconsistencies, lies, anything that doesn't add up." Marcus delivered his initial report 2 weeks later, and the contents made my blood run cold. Derek had never deployed to Afghanistan. In fact, he'd been discharged from the Army after 18 months for theft of government property. The discharge papers showed he'd stolen equipment worth over $5,000 and sold it to civilian buyers. "There's more," Marcus said, sliding additional documents across his desk. "Drug possession charges in Tucson from 2 years ago. Charges were dropped when he agreed to enter a treatment program, but he never completed it." My parents don't know about any of this. According to financial records, your parents have been making payments to various legal offices in Tucson and Phoenix for the past 3 years. Defense attorneys, bail bondsmen, treatment facilities. The scope of Derek's deception was staggering. While I'd been working honest jobs and building a marriage, my brother had been living a criminal lifestyle funded by our parents' savings. How much money are we talking about? Over $40,000 in the past 3 years. Your parents cleaned out your father's 401k, took multiple loans against their house, even borrowed against your mother's life insurance policy. I felt sick. For what? Keeping Derek out of prison. Marcus opened another file. "Here's where it gets interesting. Remember that college fund your parents said was lost to market fluctuations when you were 19? I nodded. That fund had been my ticket to engineering school until my parents regretfully explained that poor investments had wiped it out. $15,000 was withdrawn the same week Derek was arrested for breaking into cars in the mall parking lot. Your parents used your college money to hire him a defense attorney." The betrayal cut deeper than Sarah's affair. My entire adult life had been shaped by that loss. Instead of becoming an engineer, I'd learned automotive repair at community college. I'd always wondered what might have been. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Derek's been forging your signature on various documents, loan applications, credit card authorizations, even a small business license." "Small business?" "Patterson Auto Consulting, registered to your home address, but using Derek's social security number. The business received a $15,000 equipment loan 6 months ago." "Equipment loan for what?" Marcus pulled up photos on his laptop. "Surveillance suggests your brother's running a drug distribution operation out of your parents' basement. Marijuana primarily, but also prescription pills." The images showed Derek's associates coming and going from my parents' house at all hours. Young men with cash, older women seeking pills, all conducting business through the basement entrance. My parents have to know. Financial records suggest they're receiving money from Derek's activities. Utilities are being paid in cash. Grocery receipts show purchases far beyond their normal spending patterns. They're laundering his drug money. Not intentionally, probably, but they're benefiting from criminal proceeds. I stared at the evidence spread across Marcus's desk. My parents weren't just enablers. They were unwitting participants in Derek's criminal enterprise. That weekend, I drove past my childhood home and parked down the street. Within 2 hours, I witnessed a steady stream of visitors to the basement entrance. My parents' car wasn't in the driveway, but Derek's truck was parked prominently in front. My phone buzzed with a text message from my mother. Family barbecue Sunday. Derek's grilling. Please come. Sunday afternoon, I arrived at the barbecue with a hidden recorder in my jacket pocket. The scene was surreal. Derek played the perfect host flipping burgers while Sarah held baby Emma. My parents beamed proudly at their family gathering. Andy, my father said, "Glad you could make it. We need to discuss this legal situation." What about it? Derek's lawyer thinks you should consider settling out of court. Accept reasonable child support terms, maintain visitation rights with Emma. Reasonable according to who? Derek joined our conversation, beer in hand. According to reality, brother. The court's going to side with the mother and child. You can fight it and lose everything. Or you can be smart about it. Smart like stealing equipment from the army? Derek's smile faltered for the first time. I don't know what you're talking about. Dishonorable discharge for theft. Drug charges in Tucson. Using my identity for business loans. My parents looked confused, but Derek's expression hardened dangerously. Be careful, Andy. You're making accusations you can't prove. Marcus Thompson is very thorough. Who's Marcus Thompson? The private investigator documenting your criminal activities. Derek set down his beer and stepped closer. You hired a PI to investigate family. I hired a PI to investigate a criminal who happens to share my DNA. Derek, my mother interrupted. What's he talking about? Derek never took his eyes off me. Andy's desperate. He's making up stories to avoid his responsibilities. Stories like your drug dealing operation in their basement? My father's face went pale. What drug dealing operation? Derek's casual mask slipped completely. That's enough, Andy. You need to leave. Or what, you'll forge more documents, with my signature steal more money from mom and dad? I said leave. Make me. Derek lunged forward, but I was ready. His first swing missed and I grabbed his wrist, twisting until he dropped to his knees on the patio. You want to fight me? Derek, let's fight. But we'll do it with lawyers and evidence and criminal charges. Sarah screamed. My mother cried. My father demanded we both stop. But as I released Derek's wrist and walked toward my car, I saw something in his eyes that chilled me. This wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Derek had built his entire lifestyle on lies, theft, and manipulation. Now that someone was threatening to expose him, he'd become truly dangerous. The war between us was about to escalate beyond family disputes and legal proceedings. 2 months before the court hearing, I began systematically documenting Derek's criminal activities. With Marcus's help, I installed hidden cameras around my parents' property, positioned to capture the drug trafficking without violating privacy laws. We focused on the basement entrance, the driveway, and the back alley where most transactions occurred. The footage was damning. Within a week, we recorded dozens of drug sales with Derek personally handling transactions involving young adults who paid cash for small packages. More disturbing were the prescription pill sales to elderly customers who arrived in expensive cars. Your brother's running a sophisticated operation, Marcus observed as we reviewed footage in his office. Different products for different demographics, street drugs for younger buyers, prescription pills for suburban clients. How is he getting prescription medications? Probably buying them from people who sell their monthly prescriptions for cash. Opioids, anxiety medications, sleep aids. There's a huge market for pills among people who can't get prescriptions legitimately. I watched Derek on the monitor counting cash with the efficiency of an experienced dealer. This wasn't recreational use or small-time dealing. This was a business. Mal, we need to be careful, Marcus warned. If Derek realizes he's being watched, he might become violent or destroy evidence. That concern became reality sooner than expected. On a Thursday evening, I received a panicked call from Sarah. Andy, I need to see you, alone. Why would you want to see me? Please, it's important. Meet me at the coffee shop on Bell Road in 30 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Sarah was waiting in a corner booth, baby Emma, sleeping in her carrier. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, and a nervous tremor in her hands. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "What do you want, Sarah?" "I want out." The simple statement hung between us. Out of what? This whole situation. Derek, your parents, the legal case, everything. You're the one who destroyed our marriage. I know. Tears began flowing down her cheeks. I made a terrible mistake, but now I'm trapped. Trapped how? Sarah glanced around nervously before leaning closer. Derek isn't who I thought he was. The charming, attentive man who swept me off my feet. That was an act. What do you mean? He's controlling, angry, paranoid. He monitors my phone calls, follows me when I leave the house, threatens me if I talk to anyone he doesn't approve of. Threatens you how? With my sister Carmen. I remembered Carmen, Sarah's younger sister, who'd immigrated from El Salvador 5 years earlier. What about Carmen? She's undocumented. Derek found out and said he'd call Immigration and Customs Enforcement if I ever tried to leave him or tell anyone about his activities. The pieces clicked into place. Derek wasn't just running drugs, he was using blackmail to control Sarah. Sarah, you need to report this. To who the police ice, either way Carmen gets deported. There are programs to protect victims. Derek says he has contacts in law enforcement. He says no matter where I go or who I tell, Carmen will disappear. I studied Sarah's terrified expression and realized she genuinely believed Derek's threats. What kind of activities is he involved in? Besides the drugs, identity theft, credit card fraud, fake documents, he's got a whole network of people doing different crimes. Your parents' house is just one location. My parents know about this. Your father knows Derek's making money illegally. Your mother suspects, but doesn't ask questions. They're so desperate to keep Derek happy that they'll overlook anything, even if it destroys their lives. Derek convinced them that if he goes to prison, they'll lose their house anyway, because of all the loans they've taken. So they might as well let him keep operating until he can pay everything back. The twisted logic was pure Derek. Create a crisis, then present himself as the only solution. Sarah, I can protect Carmen, but you need to help me stop Derek. How? Document everything you can, financial records, contacts, schedules, locations. Build a case that law enforcement can't ignore. If Derek finds out I'm helping you, he won't. I have federal contacts now. That got her attention. Federal. I explained about Autotech Industries' investigation into identity theft and how Derek's use of my personal information had triggered federal interest. What I didn't mention was that FBI agent Patricia Flores had contacted me the previous week about Derek's activities. There's something else, Sarah said hesitantly. Derek's planning something big. He says after the court hearing we're taking the kids and leaving Arizona. Leaving for where? Mexico. He says he's been moving money there for months, setting up a new life. The child support money from you is supposed to fund the final move. The scope of Derek's plan was breathtaking. He'd systematically destroyed my marriage, bankrupted my parents, built a criminal operation, and now intended to flee the country with the proceeds. Sarah, you can't let him take Emma to Mexico. I don't have a choice. He controls everything. Yes, you do. Help me stop him. Sarah stared at baby Emma for a long moment. What would you need me to do? Document his drug operations, record conversations about Mexico, find evidence of the money he's been moving. And Carmen? I'll make sure she's protected. The FBI has programs for witnesses whose family members are threatened. For the first time since our marriage ended, Sarah smiled genuinely. You'd do that for her for me? After everything I've done? I'd do it for Emma. She deserves better than being raised by a criminal in hiding. We talked for another hour, developing a plan for Sarah to secretly document Derek's activities while protecting Carmen from retaliation. As we prepared to leave, Sarah grabbed my hand. "Andy, I'm so sorry about everything. I know I can't undo what happened, but if there's ever a chance for us to—" "Let's focus on stopping Derek first," I said gently. "Everything else can wait." But as I drove home that night, I realized something had shifted. For the first time since discovering Sarah's affair, I felt hope that maybe something could be salvaged from this disaster. Not our marriage necessarily, but perhaps our humanity. 1 month before the court hearing, my world expanded beyond family drama into federal investigation territory. Agent Patricia Flores from the FBI's White Collar Crime Division called while I was at work, her voice professional but urgent. "Mr. Patterson, I understand your brother has been using your identity for fraudulent purposes." "That's correct." "We'd like to meet. Your employer, Autotech Industries, has been cooperating with our investigation into a larger identity theft ring. Your brother's activities may be connected." That afternoon, I sat in Agent Flores' downtown Phoenix office, surrounded by charts and computer screens showing financial data I couldn't begin to interpret. "Identity theft has become a sophisticated criminal enterprise," Agent Flores explained. "What starts as someone stealing credit cards often evolves into complex networks involving drug trafficking, money laundering, and document fraud. How does Derek fit into this? Your brother's been identified as a mid-level operator in a network that spans 3 states. He uses stolen identities to obtain business loans, credit lines, and equipment purchases, then sells the goods for cash to fund drug operations." Agent Flores showed me surveillance photos of Derek meeting with people I didn't recognize in parking lots across Phoenix. These individuals have been flagged for various financial crimes. Your brother appears to be a coordinator connecting different criminal activities. You've been watching him for 6 months, but we need inside access to build a comprehensive case. Someone who can document the scope of his operations. You want me to wear a wire? We want you to be our eyes and ears. Your upcoming court hearing provides perfect cover for increased contact with your family. The idea terrified me, but I thought about Emma growing up in Derek's criminal world. What would I need to do? Attend family gatherings, record conversations, document drug transactions. Nothing that would put you in immediate danger, but enough to establish the scope of criminal activity. What about my parents? If they're unwitting participants, they'll likely receive minimal sentences. Probation finds community service, but if they're active partners, that changes everything. I spent 2 days considering Agent Flores' proposal. Finally, I agreed to cooperate partly for justice and partly for Emma's future. The wire was surprisingly small, hidden in a modified shirt button that recorded conversations within 20 feet. My first assignment was Sunday dinner at my parents' house. The dinner felt surreal. My mother had prepared pot roast, my father discussed baseball scores, and Derek played with Emma like a devoted uncle. But knowing I was recording every word made me hyper-aware of subtle criminal references. "Business has been good this week," Derek told my father while carving the roast. "And that's wonderful, son. Glad to see you getting on your feet." "Yeah, the consulting work is really taking off. Lots of demand for automotive expertise." My father nodded proudly, apparently unaware that Derek's automotive consulting involved selling stolen car parts through online auctions. After dinner, Derek pulled me aside in the garage. "Andy, I want you to know there are no hard feelings about this court thing. We're family. No hard feelings about you stealing my wife?" Derek laughed. "Sarah makes her own choices. But I want what's best for everyone, especially Emma. What's best for Emma is honesty. Honesty's overrated, brother. What matters is results. Results like your drug dealing." Derek's expression hardened. "I don't know what you think you know, but you should be careful about making accusations. Or what? Or you might find out that family loyalty has limits." The threat was clear and recorded. Agent Flores was pleased when I delivered the audio files Monday morning. Your brother's getting sloppy, she observed. Criminals often become overconfident when they think they're winning. What's our next step? We need documentation of his financial operations, bank records, cash transactions, money transfers. That's where Sarah became invaluable. She'd been secretly photographing Derek's financial records using her phone, documenting cash deposits, wire transfers, and cryptocurrency transactions that painted a picture of systematic money laundering. Derek moves money constantly, Sarah explained during one of our clandestine meetings. Cash from drug sales gets deposited in multiple accounts, then transferred to cryptocurrency exchanges, then converted to Mexican pesos. How much money are we talking about? Hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 2 years. He's been preparing for this Mexico plan longer than I realized. Sarah also provided information about Derek's criminal associates, including names, addresses, and roles in his organization. The scope was larger than anyone had imagined. Your brother's not just a dealer, Agent Flores told me after reviewing Sarah's intelligence. He's running a regional operation with connections to Mexican cartels. Cartels. The money laundering techniques, the sophisticated identity theft, the planned escape to Mexico. These are cartel methodologies. The revelation changed everything. Derek wasn't just a local criminal, he was part of an international network. Agent Flores, there's something else. Derek's planning to leave the country right after the court hearing. With the children, with Emma, the new baby Sarah, and all the money he's stolen. Agent Flores leaned back in her chair. Then we need to accelerate our timeline. What does that mean? It means your court hearing just became a federal operation. As I drove home that evening, I realized the stakes had escalated beyond family disputes. Derek wasn't just destroying my life. He was threatening national security through his cartel connections. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had real allies. Agent Flores had resources I couldn't imagine. Sarah was providing crucial intelligence. Even Marcus had federal backup now. Derek had made a critical error in his arrogance. He'd assumed his family connections would protect him from consequences. He was about to discover how wrong he could be. The morning of the court hearing, I sat in my car outside the family courthouse watching Derek and Sarah arrive with my parents. Derek wore an expensive suit I'd never seen before, while Sarah carried baby Emma in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My parents looked nervous but determined, clutching folders of documents that would support Derek's case. Inside the courtroom, Judge Maria Santos presided over what was supposed to be a routine child support hearing. Derek's attorney, James Morrison from Morrison, Blake and Associates, presented their case with polished confidence. Your Honor. Morrison began, "This is a straightforward matter of parental responsibility. Mr. Andrew Patterson was married to Miss Sarah Patterson when baby Emma was conceived and born. Arizona law clearly establishes him as the presumed legal father, regardless of biological circumstances. My attorney, Janet Walsh, countered with DNA evidence, but Morrison objected smoothly. Your Honor, biological paternity is irrelevant when we consider the child's best interests. Mr. Andrew Patterson accepted this pregnancy prepared for fatherhood and established a parental relationship. The child's welfare requires consistent financial support." Judge Santos nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Morrison, please call your first witness." My mother took the stand, her hands shaking as she was sworn in. Morrison guided her through testimony about family values, moral obligations, and Emma's need for stability. Mrs. Patterson Morrison asked, "In your opinion, what would be best for baby Emma?" "That her legal father accept his responsibilities," my mother said firmly. "Andy has always been a good provider. Emma deserves his support, even though he's not the biological father. Family isn't just about biology. It's about love and commitment and doing what's right." My father's testimony followed similar lines, emphasizing my financial stability and moral duty to support Emma regardless of paternity. Then Derek took the stand, and I watched him transform into the victim. Gone was the arrogant criminal I knew. In his place sat a humble man seeking fairness for his child. "Your Honor," Derek said when Morrison asked about his relationship with Sarah. "I love Sarah and Emma. I want to provide for them, but I'm struggling to find steady work after my military service." "What kind of military service?" Morrison asked. "I served in Afghanistan. Combat deployment. It's been difficult adjusting to civilian life." The lie was delivered with such sincerity that I saw Judge Santos's expression soften with sympathy. "I'm not asking Andy to raise my child," Derek continued, "but legally, the state considers him responsible. I'm just asking for fairness." Morrison concluded with Sarah's testimony, where she reluctantly supported Derek's position while appearing sympathetic to my situation. "Ms. Patterson," Morrison said, "do you believe Mr. Andrew Patterson should be required to pay child support for Emma?" "I wish none of this was necessary," Sarah said, glancing at me with what appeared to be genuine regret. "But Emma needs support, and Arizona law says Andy is responsible." Finally, it was my turn. Janet Walsh had prepared me carefully, but as I walked to the witness stand, I felt the weight of everything I'd discovered about Derek's criminal activities. "Mr. Patterson, Adjukapro." Janet began, "Please tell the court about your relationship with baby Emma." "I believed Emma was my daughter for 6 months. I prepared for fatherhood, bought baby furniture, planned for her future. When I discovered she wasn't biologically mine, I felt betrayed, but not angry at Emma herself." "Do you believe you should be financially responsible for Emma's care?" "I believe children should be supported by their actual parents, not by victims of fraud." Derek's attorney objected, but Judge Santos allowed me to continue. "Mr. Patterson." Janet said, "Have you discovered any information about Derek Patterson that might be relevant to this case?" This was my moment. I looked directly at Derek, whose confident expression was beginning to falter. "Your Honor, I've discovered that my brother Derek has been lying about virtually everything: his military service, his employment, his financial situation, even his identity." Morrison jumped up. "Objection, this is character assassination." "Your Honor, I said before Judge Santos could rule, Derek Patterson was dishonorably discharged from the Army for theft. He's never served in Afghanistan. He's currently running a drug trafficking operation from my parents' home, using my stolen identity to launder money through fraudulent business accounts." The courtroom erupted. Derek stood up angrily. Sarah gasped, and my parents looked confused and horrified. "Mr. Patterson," Judge Santos said sternly, "these are serious accusations. Do you have evidence?" I nodded to Janet, who signaled toward the back of the courtroom. Agent Patricia Flores and 2 other federal agents entered, their badges clearly visible. "Your Honor," Agent Flores announced, "I'm Special Agent Patricia Flores with the FBI. We have federal warrants for Derek Patterson's arrest on charges of identity theft, drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy." Derek tried to run. He actually bolted from his chair and headed for the courtroom exit, but federal agents were waiting. The arrest happened in full view of everyone, with Derek shouting that this was all a setup. "Derek Patterson," Agent Flores announced as handcuffs clicked into place. "You're under arrest for federal crimes, including identity theft, drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud." As Derek was led away, he screamed at me, "This isn't over, Andy. You have no idea what you've started." Judge Santos called for order, but the damage was done. My parents sat in stunned silence, realizing their golden boy was a federal criminal. Sarah held baby Emma protectively, tears streaming down her face. "Your Honor," Janet Walsh said when order was restored, "in light of these revelations, we move to dismiss all child support claims against my client." Morrison, clearly blindsided by his client's arrest, stammered an objection, but Judge Santos had heard enough. "Given the extraordinary circumstances revealed today, I'm suspending all proceedings pending federal investigation. Mr. Andrew Patterson, you are not required to pay child support for a child that is not biologically yours, especially when the biological father has been arrested for federal crimes. But the biggest revelation came as we prepared to leave the courtroom. Your Honor, I said, there's one more thing. I've petitioned for emergency custody of baby Emma. Sarah's head snapped up in surprise. What? Derek's criminal associates have been threatening Emma's safety. I have FBI documentation that his cartel connections pose a danger to anyone connected to his operations, including innocent children. Agent Flores stepped forward. Your Honor, the federal government supports Mr. Andrew Patterson's custody petition. We believe baby Emma is at risk if she remains in Derek Patterson's criminal network. Judge Santos looked at Sarah, who was crying openly now. Ms. Patterson, how do you feel about this custody request? Sarah looked at me, then at Emma, then back at the judge. If Andy thinks Emma will be safer with him then maybe that's best. And just like that, everything changed. Derek was in federal custody facing decades in prison. I had custody of Emma, the little girl I'd thought was mine, for 6 months. And Sarah was free from Derek's control for the first time in over a year. As we left the courthouse, Sarah approached me carefully. Andy, thank you for everything. For protecting Emma, for protecting Carmen, for stopping Derek before he destroyed more lives. What will you do now? I don't know. Start over, I guess. Try to be the person I used to be before Derek manipulated everything. I looked down at Emma sleeping peacefully in her carrier, unaware that her world had just completely changed. We'll figure it out, I told Sarah, all of us, together. 6 months after Derek's arrest, I stood in the nursery I'd originally built for what I thought was my biological daughter, watching Emma take her first steps. She toddles between the crib and changing table, her face lighting up with each wobbly success. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, encouraging Emma with gentle words and clapping hands. Derek had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison after pleading guilty to identity theft, drug trafficking, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. The judge had been particularly harsh because of the cartel connections and Derek's exploitation of family relationships. His early release was unlikely. The house felt peaceful in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Sarah had moved into the guest bedroom 2 months earlier, not as my wife, but as Emma's mother and someone working to rebuild her life. Our relationship was complicated, built on shared trauma and mutual commitment to Emma's welfare, but it was honest in ways our marriage had never been. She's getting so fast, Sarah observed as Emma navigated around the rocking chair. Too fast. Soon she'll be running. Andy, can I ask you something? I looked up from the legal documents I'd been reviewing. Our divorce had been finalized, but we were working through custody arrangements that prioritized Emma's stability. What's on your mind? Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Really forgive me? Not just tolerate me for Emma's sake? The question deserved an honest answer. I'm working on it. Some days are easier than others. I understand. I know what I did was unforgivable. Sarah, you were manipulated by someone who specializes in exploitation. That doesn't excuse the choices you made, but it helps me understand them. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. The therapy is helping. Dr. Martinez says I have to forgive myself before I can expect forgiveness from others. How's that going? Slowly, but I'm learning to recognize manipulation tactics, to trust my own judgment again. Emma tottered over to where I sat and reached up to be lifted. As I picked her up, she babbled something that sounded like Dada, and my heart clenched with complex emotions. She thinks of you as her father, Sarah said softly. Legally, I am her father now. Derek's parental rights were terminated as part of his plea agreement. The formal adoption had been completed 3 months earlier. Emma Patterson was officially my daughter regardless of biology. Derek would have no legal claim to her even after his release from prison. My parents had suffered consequences for their involvement in Derek's criminal enterprise. They'd pled guilty to money laundering charges and received suspended sentences with 2 years probation and community service. More importantly, they'd lost their home to pay restitution to Derek's victims. But they were trying to rebuild their relationship with me. Every Sunday they came to dinner at my house, where they were slowly getting to know their granddaughter properly. "I still can't believe we were so blind," my mother had said during last week's visit. "All those years of making excuses for Derek, of choosing him over you." "You thought you were helping family," I'd replied. "Derek's very good at manipulation. That's no excuse for what we did to you. The college fund, the loans, the legal fees. We destroyed your opportunities to protect someone who was destroying himself." My father had been quieter in his remorse, but his actions spoke louder than words. He'd taken a part-time job at 72 years old to help pay restitution faster. They were living in a modest apartment now, their retirement dreams sacrificed to Derek's criminal ambitions. The most surprising development had been Carmen's situation. Agent Flores had connected Carmen with an immigration attorney who helped her apply for a U visa, available to victims of crimes who assist law enforcement. Carmen's testimony about Derek's threats had been crucial to his conviction, and her legal status was now secure. "Thank you," Carmen had told me through tears when her visa was approved. "You saved my life, and Sarah's life, and Emma's life." Carmen now worked as a translator for the same law firm that had helped her, turning her traumatic experience into a way to help other victims. Sarah had found work as a veterinary technician, again slowly rebuilding her financial independence. She insisted on paying child support for Emma, even though I didn't need the money. "It's important for me to contribute," she'd explained. "I need to prove to myself that I can be responsible for my daughter." The evenings had become our time to talk after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet. We'd sit in the living room, sometimes watching television, sometimes just talking about our days, our hopes, our fears, about raising Emma. "Do you ever think about getting back together?" Sarah asked one evening as we watched a movie. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I think we need to figure out who we are as individuals before we can consider who we might be as a couple. What if that takes years? Then it takes years. Emma needs stability more than she needs her parents to be married." "You're a good man, Andy. I lost sight of that during all the chaos with Derek." "I'm not perfect. I made mistakes too." "Like what?" "I should have paid more attention to our marriage. I should have noticed you were unhappy before Derek exploited that unhappiness." "That doesn't justify what I did." "No, but it explains part of why it happened." Those conversations were helping us build something new. Not a romantic relationship, but a partnership focused on Emma's welfare and our own healing. The financial recovery had been slower but steady. Derek's assets had been seized and sold, with proceeds going to victim restitution. My parents would be paying Derek's victims for years, but at least the payments were manageable with their reduced lifestyle. Autotech Industries had promoted me to shop supervisor, partly because of my cooperation with the federal investigation, and partly because of my demonstrated integrity under pressure. The salary increase helped support our expanded household. Emma was thriving. At 18 months old, she was curious, happy, and completely unaware of the drama that had surrounded her birth. She called me Dada, Sarah Mama, and my parents Grandma and Grandpa. To her, we were simply family. "Andy," Sarah said, as we watched Emma play with her blocks, "I want you to know something." "What's that?" "If you ever decide you want a complete fresh start without me complicating your life, I'll understand. I'll move out. We'll share custody, and you can find someone who didn't betray you." I considered her words carefully. "Sarah, what happened between us was terrible. The betrayal, the lies, the manipulation. But Emma is the best thing that's come from all of this. Even though she's not biologically yours, especially because she's not biologically yours. I chose to be her father. That means more than biology ever could. And what about us? I don't know what we'll be in the future, but right now we're Emma's parents. We're two people learning to trust again. We're a family, even if it's not the family we originally planned. As Emma toddles over with a picture book demanding a story, I realize that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most painful experiences. Derek's betrayal had destroyed my old life, but it also forced me to examine what really mattered. Family isn't about blood or legal documents or even romantic love. Family is about people who choose to support each other, protect each other, and grow together through whatever challenges life presents. Emma climbed onto my lap with her book, and Sarah settled beside us on the couch. As I began reading about a little duck learning to swim, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. The story wasn't over. We'd continue to face challenges as Emma grew up, as Sarah and I figured out our relationship as my parents worked to rebuild their lives. But we'd face those challenges together with honesty, instead of manipulation, with love, instead of exploitation. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't getting everything you wanted. Sometimes it's discovering that what you needed was something completely different from what you originally thought you wanted. Derek had tried to destroy my life, but ultimately, he'd given me something more valuable than what he'd taken away. He'd given me the opportunity to become the man I was meant to be, someone who protects the innocent, stands up for truth, and chooses love over revenge. As Emma's eyes grew heavy and she snuggled closer during the story, I looked at Sarah and saw not the woman who had betrayed me, but the woman who was working every day to become someone worthy of forgiveness. And I realized that forgiveness isn't something you give once and forget about. It's something you choose every day, sometimes multiple times a day, until eventually it becomes as natural as breathing. The greatest lesson from this whole experience is that strength isn't about never being hurt. Strength is about how you respond when people you trust try to destroy you. Real strength means protecting those who can't protect themselves, even when those people are connected to the ones who hurt you. True family protects the innocent, holds the guilty accountable, and chooses truth over comfortable lies. Sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is stand up to the people you love most. But if you don't stand up for what's right, then love becomes just another word for enabling destruction. What would you do if your own family turned against you to protect someone who was destroying lives? Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace and standing up for what's right? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in impossible situations. Share this with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable destructive behavior. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that no matter how dark things get, there's always hope for justice, healing, and redemption when you choose truth over comfort.